Hi. I just thought I would do a vlog as we're walking here in Lions Woods. It's gone very cold. We're down from the above average of 50 back down to below average of I think 1920 Fahrenheit. I was going to talk today about anybody who follows my channel for some time knows that I have an interest in true crime stories, especially, I don't know, ones that have stood out and captured the public's fascination. Historic ones such as Jack the Ripper, Lizzie Borden, the Manson case. Lately, every once in a while, I'll revisit them, almost like I will in an old book that I like to read over, and watch YouTube documentaries or read some posts online about them. I don't know why, I just always have enjoyed true crime, but the infamous cases, not, I don't know. I don't really have interest in your ordinary everyday murder. It has to be something sensational and historic. Well, lately, I've been revisiting the Columbine shooting. The 1999 Columbine High School shooting in Littleton, Colorado. There's some very good documentaries on YouTube about the case. I think one of them's called The Columbine Killers, and there's several others. I don't know, the case is it gets my mind working as far as regards who is ultimately responsible. How could it have been stopped? Things like that. I find it very sad, for obvious reasons. I think it was 12 innocent students who were killed and the one teacher. But I also feel very sad about the killers, Eric Harris and Dylan Klebold. This gets my psychological mind start to churn and work. I took, I think, Intro to Psych in college, and my professor encouraged me to go into psychology. She told me I was a natural. I tend to get into people's heads in cases like this and try to figure out why it happened and what could have, stopped it. As far as I can tell, Eric Harris was a psychopath, and Dylan Klebold wasn't, or he became a psychopath through the influence of Eric Harris. Dylan Klebold, I think, was mostly a depressive, suicidal guy who was very unhappy in his own skin. I think he found himself to be ugly and awkward. He was like 6'4" and very thin, with very long, angular features. And he would have crushes on girls. None of them would want to have anything to do with him. And it would break his heart, and he would write in his private journal about how sad and lonely he was and suicidal. Very sad character, and I think it was his misfortune to meet up with Eric Harris, who, for other reasons, developed into a homicidal psychopath. Very strange character and very strange family. I mean, that Eric Harris kid, he very bright, but very disturbed. He taught himself how to make bombs, pipe bombs, and he somehow amassed a whole stockpile of them in his home without his parents ever knowing. They were hidden all through the home, and in the yard, and the parents never discovered them or knew that he had them. He was making homemade napalm, and he and Dylan got a friend who had a of-age ID to help them get guns, and then they had guns hidden in the house. The parents didn't know they had those either. Very strange setup. I think, you know, nobody expects that their kid is going to mount an armed assault on their school, but you would think parents would know that their child was amassing pipe bombs, making them himself, and storing them in your home in various places. I don't know. I hate to assign blame to anybody because it's not my place. And like I said, this was 1999, so we're looking back at a time when there really weren't, this was like the first school shooting. So at that time, nobody expected anything like that would happen. And these kids were very adroit at hiding things and keeping things quiet from their parents and their friends. All the while they were keeping journals where they were confessing it all and having web pages where they were confessing it all. There's a lot of blame to go around. People should have known. People should have seen. People should have spoken up, spoken out. And it just always comes down to nobody expected it to happen, you know. Very sad. Very sad. Wasted lives. Right, Busby? Wasted lives. It's so cold. I'm going to have to put my hands in my pockets even though I'm wearing gloves. Okay. Bye. Okay, my Columbine vlog continued. I hate it. You know, it's hard for me to vlog because I'm a thinker. And I have very deep thoughts most of the time. But when it comes to trying to express them orally, I can't do it as well as I can in my thoughts. And I find that frustrating sometimes when I try to vlog. But I think that the whole Klebold and Harris thing became, you know, and I heard a FBI guy, a profiler, who analyzed the case, and this was his analysis, and I agree. That Dylan Klebold was a very sad, depressed, suicidal type of teen boy. And Eric Harris had developed into a psychopath whose writings and rantings, and he was issuing threats against classmates, and he was making and amassing weapons, and playing very violent video games, and talking about how he hated everyone and couldn't wait until he could kill people, and he was psychopathic. And you had this unfortunate coupling, this meeting of these two, and it just so happened that they were being bullied in school and isolated, and I think they both felt like their masculinity had been compromised in their society, which was the school. That they were bullied by the athletes, the jocks, made fun of, belittled, made to feel less than. And Eric Harris in particular, I think, had a deep-seated need to exert his masculinity and be seen as a man. And I think this had been stripped from him at the school, where he was sort of treated like a wimp and bullied. And you combine that with Dylan, who was very unhappy in his own awkward skin and depressed that he felt like nobody loved him and probably never would. And they developed a sort of shared insanity. And I think that's what happened in the Manson family. Manson took in these runaway teens and early 20 kids who were filled with rage against their parents and rebellion, and the late 60s with the Vietnam War and the protests against the government. They were filled with all of that, and they were experimenting with heavy drugs that we didn't really fully understand the effects of and the addictive characteristics of. And they were taking heavy doses of these things, and they were... What was that noise? Did you hear that, Busby? And it was their misfortune to fall under the spell of a career criminal who reined them in and sort of started pimping the girls and turning the guys into drug dealers and thieves. Before you know it, he was turning them into murderers as well. And he isolated them and cut them off from society, and they'd sort of developed this shared insanity, like what happens in most cults. They become isolated, and their irrational beliefs start to become real to their minds, and it's called shared insanity. And I think that's what happened with Klebold and Harris. They developed this fantasy world where they were going to go to that school and reclaim and reassert their masculinity through violence. Very sad. It's very sad that the adults did not step in at the right times, did not get them help. Okay, that was some parts of my thoughts that I didn't get out in the first video.